Hello all, welcome to part 29 of the Wireless LAN Security Mega Primer. So as many of you have already been waiting, we are going to formally start WPA Enterprise today with going ahead and seeing how we can install FreeRADIUS-WPE on BT5. So let's begin. So as we've seen in a lot of previous introductory videos, WPA Enterprise basically uses a Radius server to authenticate various supplicants which are clients, right? And depending on whatever the Radius server supports as EAP types, which could be MD5, PEEP, TLS, etc., those can be used in conjunction with what the client can support. Now the de facto open source Radius server is called FreeRADIUS and it is available on freeradius.org. Since the time I probably started looking into Wi-Fi as early as 2003, I think FreeRADIUS was there. So it's been there for a very, very long time. Simply because, traditionally Radius servers were actually used with PPP and a lot of other, older dial-up style things, if many of you might recall. So what is FreeRADIUS WPE? And this is where FreeRADIUS is something we are familiar with, but WPE stands for Wireless Pawnage Edition. And this is actually a patch written for FreeRADIUS by our friends Joshua and Brad. And what this actually allows you to do is convert the FreeRADIUS code into an attack server which you can use for your advantage. So the patch is available on that link. But the interesting and good news for you is that Backtrack already has FreeRADIUS WPE installed. Anyway, so what are the key benefits? And this has been shamelessly ripped directly from Josh's site. First of all, is the whole setup is much more simpler because a lot of configuration which you would have to do manually, Josh has already kind of gone ahead and done it. This includes the RFC, 1918 series of addresses which have been added, simplification of the EAP authentication schema, blah blah blah, tons of stuff. But one of the most important things which probably is going to help us is adding credential logging for multiple EAP types. Right, this is what is will allow us to actually create a attack radius server which we can use to our advantage in this as well as later videos. So what's the good news? Well, I've already told you BT5 ships with FreeRADIUS WPE. The bad news is by default it doesn't work. But then the good news again is the fix to that is very simple. And the Backtrack guys have already put it up. Just a couple of missing libraries and recompilation with support for those libraries needs to be done. We'll go through the whole process in this video. Right? So we'll fix the problems, recompile, and then set up the Radius server. So what will be the network architecture? Well, we are going to have a new Backtrack 5 VM in which FreeRADIUS WP is going to run, and it is going to be connected via an Ethernet connection to the access point, and then you would have a client. In our case, as usual, we're going to have our handy iPhone as the client, which would connect to the access point, and the access point would go ahead and connect back to the FreeRADIUS server to try and authenticate the client. Right? And there's also another interface ETH0 which goes ahead and connects directly to the internet to the Backtrack VM so that we can do a lot of update procedures. Now, how you would like to structure this is entirely up to you, right? But what you would require is a steady connection, typically a LAN connection between the access point. So in my case, here is my handy little access point and the VirtualBox, the Backtrack 5 VM. Right, so let the games begin. So here we are. What I've actually done is I've created two network interfaces, as I've already told you. The first one is in NAT mode with the host. This is what is connected to the internet. And the other adapter is in bridge mode to the Ethernet interface. Now on my Mac, I have the Wi-Fi interface currently connected to the access point, to my home access point, which gives me internet connection. And this is typically where the NAT1 comes into picture. And this Ethernet adapter is just connected to the access point which we will use for this demonstration, right? So I'm just booting Backtrack directly live from the CD. So let's go ahead and start it up. Let's boot it. By the way, thank you all for the donations. Many of you have already donated quite some good amounts, and I'm going to put up the supporters page very soon on SecurityTube. And if you like these videos, please help us and donate. That's the only thing which can keep this project afloat for a very long time. Okay, so we get into the GUI. And because I've not installed Backtrack on this, right, the resolution might not really be the most optimal one, but we'll try and get work done based on that. So let's go ahead and expand this, and what we'll do is let's just focus on the Backtrack VM, right? So now by default we would have our two interfaces up and running. Just bring down the ETH1 interface, which connects to the access point for the time being, so that we only have the 0 interface. And let's just quickly check our connectivity to the internet. So typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to ensure that our connection is up and running. The NAT, probably go ahead and get an IP address. Perfect. Now I think this should work. Okay. So the way in which we can start the Radius server is radius-d, and you can look at the entire help options with an -h. Typically what you would want is to basically use the -s and -x options. And what you would notice is that when we do this, well, it basically goes ahead and does not work and gives us a lot of errors, right? So how do we go about fixing these errors? Now the first thing we need to do is go ahead and install the required libraries, right? And if you remember our presentation, what the Backtrack guys have actually told us is that libssl-dev is what seems to be missing. So let's go ahead and fetch that and install it. This should take a bit. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the pentest libs FreeRADIUS directory, FreeRADIUS-WPE, and we need to recompile all of this code. And then of course we quickly want it to go ahead and install. So this would take a bit. In the meantime, let's go ahead and make other preparations. Let's open up a new terminal, and let's go ahead and bring up the ETH1 interface. If you remember, the ETH0 interface is what we are using to connect to the internet, while ETH1 is what connects to the physical access point. So let's bring it up. I guess I'm running everything from a VM directly, and that's why you see a little bit of lag here. Let's get an IP address for the ETH1 interface, and let's check if we can go ahead and ping the access point, which is at 0.1. Perfect. Now if you notice, we have gotten an IP address of 192.168.0.196, right? So what we will need to do is now go and configure our server directly. So let's actually go ahead and open up our application. I think it might not be a good idea to actually start from here. Let's locally open up and configure it, because I'm running it directly from the VM. It's already running quite slow. Don't really want to kind of push it to an extent where it's going to be really slow, right? If you notice, yeah, it's still compiling. In the meantime, let me just quickly go to 92.168.0.1. This is the access point. Let me log in. Let me go to network setting. Let me go to wireless settings. Here we are. And if you notice, we've selected WPA Enterprise. We have WPA only with TKIP right now, and this is where we need to set our Radius server, right? And if you notice, the IP address of the Radius server is 192.168.0.196, which has been fed here. All other options are the default one, the 60 minutes and 1812. There is also a shared secret between the Radius server as well as the access point. So this is how the Radius server can authenticate that the access point is part of the authorized network, and it should allow the access point to do authentication through it, right? We'll come to what we can use here in a bit. In the meantime, let's just quickly check if the compilation is over. It's still going on. So one of the other things which we need to do is create some certificates. So let's do that in the meantime. We'll once again go to the pentest libs FreeRADIUS-WPE directory. From here we will actually go to the RADDB, and then I think it's certs. Oops. Let's go a little bit towards the close-up. Okay. And here, well, you could go ahead and create your own certificates and things like that. But what I'm going to do is use the Bootstrap script to just quickly go ahead and create a bunch of fake certificates, right? So this may take a bit. And the meantime, we've also finished our compilation here. Perfect. Now what we need to do is we need to copy all of the files basically in this directory, which is the certs directory, into user local etc, once again raddb and certs, right? Now let's come back here. Let's go back to the first terminal, and now what we're going to do is let's run the Radius server once again with the same options. And if you notice, at this point it works. So let's scroll up here. We talked about the shared secret and things like that, and you would actually notice a lot of data which is kind of being thrown up as debug data. So shared secret is typically mentioned in one of the configuration files. We'll visit many of the configuration files of the Radius server in later videos, but typically this is where you would go ahead and mention the secret. Now if you notice, our network is 192.168.0.1, so on and so forth, and this is where the match happens, where we can go ahead and use the default secret value test along with this Radius server. So this is what I've already set actually, and you can go ahead and save settings, right? I'll just save anyway. So the Radius server is all up and running, and now let's try and connect to the wireless network. So currently no users, nothing have been created, right? So of course, as you can well imagine, authentication and all that is not really going to work well. But what we want to do is just do a quick POC that end-to-end connectivity is working fine. So I've opened my handy iPhone once again, and if you notice, SecurityTube is our network. And just to show you the bigger picture, this access point is what is SecurityTube, which is connected to the FreeRADIUS-WPE, which is the actual authentication server over an Ethernet interface, and now the client is connecting. So let's go back here. You should see a lot of trace kind of hitting the screen as soon as we start the authentication. So now what I'm going to do is click SecurityTube. Immediately it asks me for a username password for the network. I don't know any, so I'm just going to go ahead and guess something, right? Maybe Vivek and ABC, and then I'm going to hit join. And what you would notice momentarily is, if you notice on the screen, a lot of interesting stuff kind of going back and forth, right? And on my phone screen, you notice that it's actually showing a certificate which we had created, example server certificate, right? And this is exactly what was created here just a few minutes back, right? You can practically see that here. So even if I do accept the certificate, well, the authentication will eventually fail, but let me just accept the certificate. And even though I do accept the certificate, if you notice, we are getting an error saying that, well, authentication did not work because we do not know the credentials, right? So this is how we can actually do a full connectivity test. And if you notice, the username which I had entered on my phone is shown here, right? So in our next video, we will actually look at how to set up the authentication in a proper way, and then also how to snoop around on packets both on the wired side as well as wireless side when the whole WPA Enterprise exchange is happening. So that would be interesting. So that's all for this video. I would really encourage you to try out this entire experiment end to end to gain confidence on setting up the Radius server, ensuring there is connectivity between the access point and the Radius server, and then finally that you can use a client to go ahead and try and authenticate to the Radius server via the access point. So that's all for this video. Please leave your comments behind. I really look forward to reading them, and well, enjoy till the next video. Bye bye.